YouTube, what is up? Today we got another reaction video, and this one is going to be a little different. This is the dirtiest player in the game. Well, the dirtiest player ever. You feel me? So we got a reaction to Bill Laimbeer. This is by Nonstop. Shout out to you. Again, I'm Coach Wiz. I'm a basketball coach and basketball trainer. If you need help, hit me up. I got all my social medias in the description. Let's get to the video. I know y'all tired of me talking. This is going to be a good one, man. I'm excited for this one.
Your move was the fadeaway. Kareem had the skyhook. And Hakeem did the dream shake. Bill Laimbeer's signature moves were elbowing, hip checking, planting feet in the opponent's landing area, and flopping after the slightest contact. They called him the Prince of Darkness, the Axe Murderer, his heinous, and the Darth Vader of the NBA. Laimbeer put the bad in the bad boy Pistons.
I don't believe this. Laimbeer gets in a fight seemingly once a week.
Everybody hated his guts, and most of his opponents still hate him today.
I never really liked Laimbeer in any social situation.
No.
Yeah.
It's because he was a dirty player.
However, despite his well-deserved bad
Larry kept it a buck. Oh, snap.
boy reputation, Bill Laimbeer isn't just some fist-swinging brute who punched people because he couldn't really play. In the 80s, Laimbeer was the best defensive rebounder in the NBA, and he was one of the first centers that could make threes and...
Hey, that's a fact. He was one of the first centers that was stepping out shooting that thing now. He was. Bill Laimbeer actually could hoop. He actually could. Let me shut up.
was a better free throw shooter than Michael Jordan. He was also super smart, and the majority of his antics were thought out and served a purpose to distract his opponents. I don't fight. I agitate, then walk away. So, how good was Bill Laimbeer actually? And was he really the dirtiest player in NBA history? And to answer that question, we need to go back to 1957 when Laimbeer was born. Bill Laimbeer Sr. was the president of a big glass manufacturing company, and his son Bill Jr. had an easy life, living in the richest parts of Chicago and Los Angeles. When he started playing in the NBA, he joked that he was the only player in the NBA with a worse salary than his father. But there were benefits and pitfalls to Laimbeer's privileged upbringing. Bill was always super confident, and he believed he'd be super successful in any profession. It just so happened that basketball was his calling, especially after he reached 6'11" and led his high school to a state championship. However, Bill was also spoiled and used to everything coming to him easily. As a freshman at Notre Dame, Laimbeer flunked out and had to attend a technical college for 2 semesters to get his grades back up, which stopped his basketball career for a year and a half.
I forgot he went to Notre Dame. I forgot about that.
And when he did return to Notre Dame's lineup for his junior and senior years, he didn't impress. Just 7 points and 6 rebounds per game did
7 and 6, not looking great.
leave anybody in awe. So it wasn't surprising when he dropped to the 3rd round of the 1979 NBA draft as the 65th overall pick by the Cavaliers. The Cavs weren't exactly thrilled with Bill for several reasons. Laimbeer wasn't particularly fast or athletic, and he wasn't a good post-up player. While all the great NBA centers had polished post moves and could make...
That wasn't his game, though. That wasn't his game. If you're looking for that, you shouldn't have drafted him. Bill Laimbeer is a stretch big. And he banged, though. He be on that glass, too.
Big shots over both shoulders. Laimbeer didn't want to be like that.
I'm just saying, you can't talk crazy about a guy, but then you know what you're getting. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you know he's not fast, explosive, and all this stuff, then why are you picking him?
And he wanted to shoot jumpers like guards. The Cavs were reluctant to even offer Bill a contract. And when they finally did, some 2 months after he got drafted, he had already signed another deal with Brescia in Italy. And in Europe, Laimbeer thrived, averaging 21 points and 12 rebounds for one season, after which he returned to the NBA at the age of 23. And as a rookie, Bill did fairly well, averaging 10 points and 8 rebounds for Cleveland.
Let's go, Bill! Huh?
Despite being second in the NBA in personal fouls. And when he played against Detroit, the Pistons GM Jack McCluskey noticed that the Cavs center played harder than anyone. and fought for the entire game, even though it was a blowout. Impressed by Laimbeer's toughness, McCluskey traded for him at the next trade deadline, where he would team up with the rookie Isaiah Thomas.
Young hoopers, this is why no matter what the score is, no matter what team you on, no matter what's going on, when you on that court, you better play hard. I tell all my players, hey, play hard, because you never know who's watching. You never know.
And when he got to the Motor City, Laimbeer blossomed. In the 1982-83 season, his first full season as a Piston, Laimbeer made the All-Star team, averaging 14 points and 12 rebounds per game. But back in those days, his reputation was far from what it became several years later.
You know, when Laimbeer first came to the Pistons, early on in his I like guys was just turning around and literally taking their fist and punching him right.
Snap. Snap. Yo, why both of them just turning fire on him like that?
Right in the face. And only years later, after taking so many punches in the face, when he started to hit.
Stop, Isaiah. Stop it. Stop it. You know you're one of my favorites. Don't act like this man wasn't doing nothing. They just turned around firing on him, man. I know when somebody has talked about someone's mother or wife or kids when I see it. That's what that man was doing. Why else are they stopping dead in their tracks, turning around and firing on him in the face? We talking about he getting hit in the face, bro. The league was in. We need to go back to that. We need to get back to that.
Back, he realized, oh, these guys aren't as tough as I thought they were. But when he started hitting back, oh, then it became a problem.
Isaiah Thomas said on the Bill Simmons podcast. And while you should take Isaiah's words with a grain of salt, because he's talking about his teammate of 13 years, there's definitely some truth to his words. But despite all the hits he took, Bill was a fierce competitor, and he didn't want to miss a single game. He missed just 9 games during his career, mostly due to suspension. Still, in 1984, Laimbeer was still not the most hated athlete in America, and the Pistons were this fun, up-and-coming team.
Hold on, man. He only missed 9 games his entire career. Nowadays, these players just taking weeks off. Load management. Personal reasons. All that money, man. It's crazy.
That nobody took seriously, but that would soon change, because that season, Chuck Daly became the head coach and immediately brought results. Detroit had the best offense in the NBA, and after 7 long years, they finally made the playoffs. Laimbeer was an all-star for the 2nd consecutive season, with 17 points and 12 rebounds per game, shooting an excellent 53% from the field and 87% from the free throw line.
He was hooping.
Despite a great season, the Pistons lost in the first round to the Knicks and Bernard King, who averaged an unreal 42.6 points per game, which was the 2nd highest scoring average in a series ever at the time. And even though they lost, it was clear that the Pistons were on the rise. With a young team, 2 All-Stars in Thomas and Laimbeer just entering their prime, and a great head coach, the future was bright for Detroit. In 1985, they added Vinnie Johnson, who would prove to be a pivotal bench player, and the Pistons finally won in the playoffs for the first time since 1976, sweeping the Nets in the first round.
To Jaminski, top of the key for the pop. Oh, it's over. The Pistons have swept New Jersey.
Still, in the second round, against the mighty Celtics in their prime, Detroit fought a good fight, but the Celtics were a much better, deeper, and more experienced team, advancing in 6 games. In Game 3 of that series, Robert Parrish elbowed Laimbeer in the face, and when Bill came up, Parrish punched him again for good measure.
Trabuca from the baseline. That won't go. Laimbeer is on the deck. And Laimbeer and Parrish have had enough.
Oh my gosh, man. Yo, Robert Parrish was always on go, man. He ain't trying to hear none of that.
Laimbeer certainly wasn't completely innocent, and the Celtics fans could argue that he had it coming. But still, it wasn't like Parrish was a sweetheart either. And this playoff series was the tipping point of the hatred between Laimbeer and the Celtics that would last for years on the court and still exists today.
Big news at Bet365.
Last month, Bet365 boosted the odds on over 10,000 bets.
I got
With
y'all.
hundreds of boosts available every day. Download the app and see why. It's never ordinary.
I got y'all, man. I'm sorry.
But in 1986, the Pistons GM McCluskey proved his brilliance once again, drafting shooting guard Joe Dumars and trading for Rick Mahorn, who was one of the most physical and hard-nosed big men in the league. Laimbeer struck gold with...
Hey, yo, that Detroit team was kind of loaded. Because they had, who they had? They had Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars. You got Laimbeer, Rick Mahorn, John Sally, right? Dennis Rodman, Vinnie Johnson. Did they have Vinnie Johnson still?
Mahorn, because he finally had a big, strong guy to back him up and fight alongside him. That season, Laimbeer led the league in rebounding, averaging 13 boards per game, along with an efficient 16.5 points per game. However, the Pistons regressed, losing to the Hawks in the first round of the playoffs, despite Laimbeer averaging 22 and 14 in the series. In 1987, the Pistons traded Kelly Tripucka for a two-time scoring champ Adrian Dantley and drafted forwards John Sally and Dennis Rodman.
Adrian Dantley, that's what I was forgetting.
And it worked. The Pistons won a franchise record 52 games, and Laimbeer made his fourth All-Star team with averages of 15 points, 12 rebounds, and an insane 89.4% free throw shooting, which was an NBA record for a center.
Guards. It's no excuse. Make those free throws, man. Yo, Laimbeer was balling.
Detroit breezed through the first two rounds of the playoffs.
All the way up. Go!
But in the Eastern Finals, they played another series for the ages against the Celtics. After Boston won the first two games, the Pistons won Game 3, largely because of Laimbeer. After a hard foul from Bill that sent Larry Bird to the ground, Larry couldn't stand it anymore and started punching Bill on the ground.
Come on, Bill. Bill, come on, man. Come on, man. Come on, Bill. We can't, come on, man. We can't have this in our league. Let's start firing on you.
And won the first two games. The
Yo,
Pistons
watch
won
this
Game
foul,
3,
man.
largely because of Laimbeer. After a hard foul from Bill that sent Larry Bird to the ground, Larry couldn't stand it anymore and started punching Bill on the ground.
Bro, that's crazy.
And Laimbeer go at it.
After which, he got ejected, which secured the win for the Pistons. Detroit then...
Nah, man. That, no. Bill. You might be a dirty player, man.
won Game 4. And in Game 5, it looked like the Pistons would win, as they held a 1-point lead with 5 seconds left. Detroit also had possession of the ball, and all they had to do was inbound it when Isaiah made the costliest turnover of his career.
To Detroit, Bird steals it. Johnson, layup, Boston, 1 second left.
Other than the Celtics win and great play by Bird, this game will also be remembered for another fight between Parrish and Laimbeer. And once again, the Celtics center couldn't take Laimbeer's antics anymore, punching him 2 times.
The tip by Parrish. He can't get it to fall, and Parrish take.
Yo, what is going on? Look how Parrish looking at him. Where his teammates at, man? Man, where Rick Mahorn at, man? Eric, y'all all seen this clip, right? I'm assuming the whole clip ain't in here because YouTube is super sensitive. But, bro, where's everybody at? I see Zeke coming. Yo, Parrish was a savage.
Laimbeer to the ground.
Even though he wasn't ejected from the game, Parrish was suspended for Game 6, and Detroit
Bro, not he wasn't ejected. He two-pieced that man from behind. He got to play still. Oh man, good times,
Detroit
man.
used his absence to force a Game 7.
And the Pistons are going to send this to a 7th game at Boston Saturday.
And even though Laimbeer indirectly won 2 games by taunting Bird and Parrish and getting them ejected, in Game 7, Bird pushed the Celtics to a close victory and another
with
finals
the
appearance,
left?
despite Detroit averaging 4 more points than Boston in that series.
The Boston Celtics will go to the finals again.
Why is everyone spiraling over YouTube banning ad blockers? Like, chill guys, just use Pi. It's a free Chrome extension that's actually made by one of the—
But because they were so close,
Yo, if y'all still watch these videos with the ads, shout out to y'all. I love y'all.
Laimbeer and the Pistons entered the 1988 season hungrier and more.
Also, this has nothing to do with nothing, but let me know what I can do to make this channel better for you guys to watch. You feel me? I would love some criticism from you guys.
Dangerous than ever. Under
Thank
Daly's direction, the Pistons adopted a philosophy of 94 feet defense, which meant full court pressing and defending the entirety of the court. Up until that time, most NBA teams ran back on defense and allowed the offensive team to cross half court unbothered. It was basically a gentleman's agreement. The Pistons didn't care. Their whole strategy was to pressure,
Let's
bump,
go.
and agitate, unlike any other team ever had, led by Laimbeer. As a result, they soon became the most disliked team in the NBA. While Detroit didn't lead the NBA in techs, they led the league in hip checks, forearms to the ribs, cheap shots to the groin, shoving players midair, and fouls after the whistle. But the main reason why the Pistons were considered dirty
That's
was
good
Bill
D.
Laimbeer, who continually put his feet in the players' landing areas after a jump shot, trying to injure the opponent.
Yo, Bill, I know you weren't doing that. Bill Laimbeer wasn't doing that.
Which made him arguably the most hated player in NBA history. But Bill and the Pistons weren't bothered by what others were saying because their plan was working. Detroit won a franchise record 54 games with the second best defense in the NBA. And when the playoffs came, their intensity was unmatched. The Pistons first defeated the Bullets and then gave Jordan his first playoff whooping in the second round.
Jordan. Clobbered. And that's what we're talking about when the Pistons want to make Jordan pay.
Which led to another showdown with Boston. The Celtics had made the finals 4 years in a row at that point, and despite their core getting older, they were still the favorites against Detroit. So, to get into Boston's head, Laimbeer would be the first Piston to go out on the floor. He'd walk up to the leprechaun logo, spit on it, and smear his spit with it.
At this point, you want the pause put on you. You feel me? But I like how he embraced it, though. I do like how he embraced it.
The sneakers, which brought the arena to the brink of madness. But this time, the Celtics could do nothing to punish his antics, as the Pistons finally managed to beat Boston in 6 games.
Hail to the new Eastern Conference Kings. The Detroit Pistons finally. 31 years it took them.
And in their first NBA Finals, Detroit squared up against another 80s dynasty, the LA Lakers. Even though the Pistons were the underdog, after 5 games, they were leading 3-2. But then, a disaster. Isaiah Thomas stepped on Michael Cooper's foot and severely sprained his ankle.
Isaiah Thomas is hurt down on the court underneath the basket. I couldn't tell what happened.
It looked like his season was over. But then, despite being unable to stand on one leg, Thomas produced one of the craziest performances in NBA history.
Yo, what kind of shoes were those? That's why the sneaks back then was
Even though the
crazy
Pistons
work.
were the underdog, after 5 games, they were leading 3-2. But then, a disaster. Isaiah Thomas stepped on Michael Cooper's foot and severely sprained his ankle.
Isaiah Thomas is hurt down on the court underneath the basket. I couldn't tell what happened.
It looked like his
Converse,
season
maybe?
was over. But then, despite being unable to stand on one leg, Thomas produced one of the craziest performances in NBA history. Isaiah miraculously kept playing. And not only did he play, he dominated.
Thomas here in the third. Thomas off balance. Basket count and a foul.
Where y'all rank this performance at all time? Put that in the comments for me.
As he goes into the first row, and he is still limping.
Thomas scored 25 points in the third quarter alone and finished the game with 43 points and 8 assists, keeping the Pistons afloat the entire game. With half a minute to go, Detroit was up by 1, and the Lakers went with a safe bet, deciding to throw the ball to Kareem to try to win the game with his trademark skyhook. But as Kareem was attempting the shot, the refs called a phantom foul on Laimbeer, who barely touched him.
Kareem.
Video in HD, ain't it?
Old man goes up and misses the shot, but goes to the line with 14 seconds to go and a chance to give the Lakers the lead.
To make things worse, Kareem also traveled before the act of shooting.
He definitely traveled. He for sure traveled. That's
But
crazy.
the refs rejected.
I remember this play. I remember like when I was doing research or whatever. I remember seeing this play. I don't think it was a foul at all. Do y'all? Let me know. He for sure traveled. I never even noticed the traveling part. But it's tough.
Rejected all protests from the Pistons and sent Jabbar
That's
to the
tough.
line. Kareem made both free throws, and the Lakers had the lead. And after Dumars missed a layup on the other end, Los Angeles
Dumars,
survived
what is
and
that?
forced a Game 7.
Eve
No
Online
layup, man.
is a vast universe.
In the deciding Game 7, the Pistons again had a chance to win. But with the hobbled Isaiah, the Lakers survived their late attempts, and Detroit lost the championship.
The game ends. The Lakers have won it again.
After the NBA Finals, the NBA video department issued a VHS cassette with highlights for each team, and someone named the '88 Pistons video The Bad Boys. When Isaiah Thomas heard what the NBA had titled the team video, he wasn't offended. He just gave the reporters his trademark smirk and said, "I guess we are the bad boys." Soon enough, the whole team
A little disrespectful, though, to just put that on the tape. I'm just saying.
embraced this nickname. Even the franchise started selling bad boy merchandise. And if you thought the Pistons were dirty and physical up to that point, they were even worse in 1989. Detroit threw more punches than anybody. And if you wanted to score at the basket, you knew you were going to suffer a blow from Rodman, Mahorn, or Laimbeer. And Laimbeer became the complete opposite of the prototype NBA center. He was always allergic to having his back to the basket and rejected the notion of developing a low post game. So rather than change Laimbeer, the Pistons ultimately
He was cashing out. That's why.
adapted their game plan to his strengths. Even though he shot threes before, the 1989 season was the first time he averaged more than 1 3-point attempt per game, making them at a decent 35% clip. He was one of the very few pick-and-pop centers in the NBA, and due to his shooting prowess, the opposing center was forced to guard him outside the paint, which freed up driving lanes for Thomas and Dumars. The Pistons won a franchise record 63 games that season, and in the first round,
Man, that Pistons team was, man, they was cold. They do not get enough credit. That was a really good team. Probably in my top, definitely top 10 teams ever for sure.
of the playoffs, they swept their arch enemies from Boston, who played without an injured Larry Bird. And after they swept the Bucks in the second round, came another clash with Michael Jordan and his Bulls in the Eastern Conference Finals. Because Jordan was by far the best player in the NBA,
He kept it in bounds. Here it is again.
Hey!
Chuck Daly knew that if they wanted to win, they had to put all their effort into stopping MJ. So Daly invented the Jordan rules, a set of guidelines on how to guard Michael and stop him any way they could, legally or illegally.
Don't give them easy field goals. Make it tough. Make it tough. No easy field goals. It's the only way we're going to get the lead back. No easy field goals.
By the end of the series, Jordan probably ended up taking more licks than field goals scored. and the Bulls simply couldn't match the Pistons' aggressiveness. Detroit won the series in 6 games and secured another finals clash with the Lakers. And in the finals, Lady Luck finally smiled at Detroit. After Byron Scott got injured in Game 1, the Lakers also lost Magic Johnson in Game 3.
And we have our first tie of the game, and Magic Johnson may have pulled a hamstring.
And with Kareem being 41 years old, the Lakers didn't stand a chance.
Driving from Thomas. How about that pass?
The Pistons swept them in the finals, and for the first time ever, became the NBA champions.
The Pistons are the basketball champions of the world.
In 1990, due to the
Super underrated, man. Underrated team.
expansion draft, the Pistons couldn't keep Rick Mahorn. But that only meant more minutes for Rodman, who won his first Defensive Player of the Year award. Despite his running mate Mahorn gone, Laimbeer continued to excel in extracurricular activities on the court, getting into fights with several opposing players, namely Charles Barkley, who hated Laimbeer more than anybody outside of Boston. And even though the Pistons were average in almost every statistical category, they played unselfish basketball and were willing to die for one another on the court, which resulted in 59 wins and another #1 seed. In the playoffs, they once again gave Jordan a beating, defeating the Bulls in 7 games to reach their 3rd consecutive NBA Finals. This time they played the Blazers, and almost every game in the finals was close. After 2 games, the series was tied, and in order to motivate his teammates before Game 3, Laimbeer deliberately ran over a photographer when leaving the tunnel. But because of their experience and
Oh, why though? Like, why is that motivating them? You might just be a bad person, man. Why are you running over a photographer, man? Come on, bro.
tenacity, the Pistons beat the Blazers in the clutch of each game, and Laimbeer's 17 rebounds in the deciding Game 5 likely swung the series in Detroit's favor, and they won their 2nd NBA title.
There's the shot. The Pistons are winners and still champions of the world.
And even though Thomas was the finals MVP, it was really Laimbeer who got to the Blazers. Throughout the series, Portland's big men were so frustrated by Laimbeer's illegal screens, defensive charges, and not to mention his usual holding, grabbing, and kicking when the refs weren't looking, he completely threw them off their game. For the 1991 season, Laimbeer averaged 2 3-pointers per game, making them at 36% efficiency. However, his overall numbers started to decline. Detroit,
Bro, that's crazy. 2 threes a game. Like, how much the game has changed, bro, is out of control. See, I was born in the 80s, but I really started watching basketball in the 90s, 2000s, you feel me? Man, it's just not the same, man. And I love basketball. I always watch basketball. I'm around basketball 24/7. That's what I do. That's how I get paid. But man, it kind of hurts me watching the NBA nowadays, man. This man was taking 2 threes a game. You got centers in the league now. It's taking 5, 6. It's insane.
also lost a bit of steam, winning only 50 games in the regular season and barely winning their first 2 playoff matchups against Atlanta and Boston. Still, the Pistons reached another conference finals against the Bulls. But this time, Jordan and Chicago were ready for the Pistons' aggression and cheap fouls. They were younger, hungrier, and better, sweeping Detroit 4-0 and announcing the start of their dynasty. Before the final game was over, Laimbeer and the rest of the Pistons left the bench and walked past the Bulls in silence, not shaking their hands. It was one of the most memorable team.
Man, so what, man? It was mad. So what? Shaking their hand, man.
Decisions in NBA history, universally hated everywhere outside of Detroit.
Pistons wasting no time in getting out of here. They left the bench, although there's 7 and 9, 10 seconds remaining. The Pistons just left.
Twisted Tea is a refreshing, hard iced tea made with real brewed tea. Keep it twisted.
And that Pistons walk-off was also symbolic because it was the beginning of the end for the Bad Boys. In 1992, the Pistons lost in the first round. And in 1993, they didn't even make the playoffs. And as their careers were reaching an end, at the beginning of the 1994 season, the longest tenured Pistons, Thomas and Laimbeer, had a big fight. Laimbeer fouled Isaiah hard in a practice for the second time in 2 weeks, leading Thomas to punch Laimbeer in retaliation, breaking his hand in the process. Everybody in the NBA was thrilled. Scott Skiles said that Isaiah couldn't have
Bill, it's just you, man. It's just you, bro.
Picked a better guy to punch, while Clyde Drexler responded that Laimbeer was a cheap shot artist and that he won't ever change, even for his teammates. Karl Malone said that if he ever had to play like Laimbeer, he'd quit the NBA, which is pretty rich coming from a guy who elbowed more people than anybody. However, Isiah and Laimbeer were great friends, and they reconciled shortly after the incident. But in the aftermath of the punch, realizing that Isiah's absence would kill the team's chances of making the playoffs and his own declining form, Laimbeer decided to retire 11 games into the season at the age of 36. So, how good was Laimbeer actually? And was he really the dirtiest player ever? The answer to the first question was given by Laimbeer himself. In one interview, he said that he always knew that he didn't have the talent of Kareem or Moses Malone, but what he had, he used to the fullest. Despite a minuscule vertical leap and fairly slow feet, Laimbeer combated that by becoming a master of positioning and anticipating, which made him an excellent rebounder and help defender. He's the third best free throw shooter ever amongst centers. He was a willing passer, and if he played in the modern era with more shooting, Laimbeer would certainly average more points.
To Isiah, trapped in backcourt, long lob to Billy. He'll square up and got left wing. It goes! Bill Laimbeer has 10,000.
Hey, that's very important for you young hoopers out there. He wasn't the fastest, strongest, but he knew where he was supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? You got to understand angles. You got to understand spots. You know what I mean? Anticipation. Like, you got to know where you're supposed to be. And if you do your work early, you give yourself a chance.
Career points.
A four-time All-Star, Laimbeer became the 19th player in league history to amass more than 10,000 points and 10,000 rebounds, and his 25% defensive rebounding rate currently ranks 34th all-time. And as far as his dirty play, you're damn right that Laimbeer crossed the line sometimes. But Bill was always pretty honest and level-headed about that, too. My job was to make sure you focused on me and didn't mess with our guards. We're in the entertainment business, and you want to give the fans what they want. If they want great plays, they look for Isiah Thomas. If they want steady plays, they look for Joe Dumars. If they want comic relief, they look for me. Laimbeer was the perfect
comic relief
heel for the NBA, an anti-hero who the crowds loved to hate. But it's undeniable that he was popular and put butts in seats. A longtime Pistons announcer, George Blaha, said this: Laimbeer rarely hit anyone, he just drove them nuts. He delighted in getting under your skin. He constantly was trying to gain not only the physical edge, but also the mental edge. If he could make you lose your concentration...
Yo, why they lying? We got the tapes. We got the tapes. He was hitting everybody.
He'd won because he never seemed to lose his cool. And most of his opponents share the same sentiment, like Kurt Rambis. I respect the guy. He'll do anything, whether it's flopping to get a call or agitating someone to get them out of their game. You got to give him credit. We're not out here to win popularity contests. Everybody tries to do a little holding, grabbing, intimidating. But I don't think he's dirty. He simply does whatever it takes to win. And whether you like Laimbeer or not, you got to respect him. He was a millionaire from birth, and yet he played every game like his life depended on it. Even though he threw a lot of cheap shots over the years, he received plenty back. And despite plenty of broken noses, cheekbones, and multiple other injuries, Laimbeer always showed up, missing just 9 total games in his entire career, always ready to help his teammates win games. Was Bill the dirtiest player ever? Probably, but he's far from the only master in the dark arts. He just happened to be the best at it, and played in an era perfectly suited for his antics. But Laimbeer never really cared how he'd be remembered anyway. The only people I care about are my teammates, my family, and my friends. People can say whatever they want about the type of game I play, but there's no denying that I'm a winner. They have to say that I'm a winner, a world champion. Thanks for watching. And if you like this video...
man. Yo, man. Shout out to Bill Laimbeer, man. Definitely, you know what I'm saying? I just wanted to play that because I think, you know, I like laughing at stuff like that. But anywho, Bill Laimbeer, man, he's pretty solid. Had a pretty solid NBA career. And it's hard when you come from that much money to be able to still go after it and go hard every single day. Because he didn't have to. You feel me? He was already paid. Bill was already paid. He already had the bag. He could have just chilled. But instead, he worked. He worked and he worked, and he made himself a respectable NBA player. He didn't have the talent. He didn't have the athleticism. He had to work. And then he had to work twice as hard when he was on the court. So it's all respect here. I will say he is for sure the dirtiest player of all time. Man, y'all let me know what y'all want to see next, man. I appreciate y'all watching. I'm up out of here, man. Oh, my goodness.